Space, the final frontier. These are the podcasts of the podcast Enterprise. Its only mission to explore story structures, to analyze our favorite characters and plot lines, to boldly talk about what everyone has seen before. Hello and welcome everyone to podcast Enterprise, where we dissect Star Trek, the original series episodes one by one, look for story structures and story arcs. My name is Bala Ramadurai, and with me I have my co-host Parvati Ramkumar. Say hello, Parvati.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode. We are going to enter some sort of gangster paradise today.
Gangsta Paradise. It is
Yes.
piece of the action. They call it piece of the action, and it is repeated as at least I think once or twice in this episode itself.
When this episode begins, you have the USS Enterprise in orbit around Sigma Iotia II. They have gone to this planet because they received a radio signal from the horizon, which went to Sigma Iotia II about 100 years back. The horizon interfered with the culture on Sigma Iotia II. They did this because the non-interference directive by Starfleet was not in place at that time. They went down, interacted with the aliens, and contaminated that culture. The Enterprise is going there to check out the planet and the civilization and just to see what things are like over there. After they approach this planet, they get a sort of invitation from a character called Bela Okmyx or Oxmix. I shall be using these words interchangeably, so I'm not sure about the pronunciation. In any case, he calls himself boss and he wants to talk to Captain Kirk. And Kirk, while he's very amused, decides that he better go down and see what this person is all about. He beams down along with Spock and McCoy to Sigma Iotia 2. He finds that it looks very much like Chicago of the 1920s. There are people walking around in suits and women walking around in frocks, and it's very confusing and it seems like gangster territory. And they're promptly accosted by a couple of gangsters who claim to be henchmen of this Oxmix character. They are taken to a large building where they find Oxmix playing pool. He talks to Kirk half politely, not very polite, but friendly enough. That's where Spock finds a contamination that the Horizon left on Sigma Iotia 2. That is a book on Chicago mobs of the 1920s. And they find that the Ioshians used this book as a guide, the sacred holy book, and developed an entire culture around it because the Ioshians are extremely bright, as Spock says, and very imitative. So they found this book and they decided they're all gangsters from the 1920s. They have developed their culture around it. Oxmix proves to be a problem because he wants Kirk to give them weapons. He knows that Kirk is from the same race as the visitors from the horizon, and he wants heaters. He wants all the phasers that Kirk has and to wage war against the other gang members. He wants to be leader of all the gangs on Sigma Iotia too. Naturally, Kirk cannot allow this to happen. Ockmix is very annoyed by this. He has him imprisoned, and then Kirk manages to get out by inventing a weird card game called Fizzbin, which has utterly nonsensical rules. And then Kirk gets out of this place, but then he's promptly captured by the rival mob boss, who again wants the same things. He wants all the weapons, he wants the Enterprise at his beck and call, and then Kirk finds himself captured. Now it's a bit of a problem because he has to use all of his wits to get these people to stop fighting each other and have some sort of a unified culture and stop shooting at each other because that's what they do all the time. And there are a lot of interesting scenes in this, including Kirk attempting to drive a car. He manages to get both of these gang bosses, along with all the other gang bosses, in one place. He shows them how much the Enterprise can do. There's a lot of bickering. Kirk decides to act like a gangster so that they listen to him. And he talks about cuts and giving profits to the Federation, which is all against the rules, but somehow he gets them to unite. And then finally, the crew of the Enterprise, including Kirk, they're released by the gang bosses and they get back to the Enterprise. And of course, there is a twist at the end where McCoy has left something very important back on Sigma Iotia 2, and that's going to create problems in the future, apparently. Back to you, Bala.
Okay, I'll talk about the four act structure. The teaser starts with the introduction of Oxmix and the background of what's there, what's at play, the contamination, as Parvati mentioned. That's what the teaser. When they get in touch, it seems like a negotiation. It seems like an invite more than a capture, which is what they find in the first act. So teaser starts off with that. It's about introduction of Oxmix and what he has to bargain with. And but Kirk's mission, or the Enterprise's mission, is to look at the extent of contamination by the previous expedition there. First act starts with Kirk and Spock being captured by the boss, Smix. It's a short first act. It ends with 8 hours to meet his demands or they are dead. Oxmix picks up the communicator and figures out a way to communicate, and that's what the second act starts with. Oxmix communicates with Scott and threatens him, but it takes a while for Scott to even get to know what Oxmix is talking about because he uses the boss lingo or the 1920s Chicago lingo, I guess, which Scott is not able to figure out that it's a threat, and then eventually does figure it out. And of course, there are lots of things happening in the second act, including the great Fizzbin. At the end of it, Kirk gets captured again. Spock also gets captured the second time by Oxmix. Against McCoy's warning, he still goes and trusts Oxmix only to get captured. Third act starts with the best, I don't know, quote of the entire episode, which is most cooperative man is a dead man. So I love this. This is where it starts, the third act, with Oxmix giving this out. And this is also a short third act. Krakow now at the end captures Spock and Kirk. So this, as you can see, this episode is all about people capturing each other. That's what this episode is about. Krakow, the rival gang's boss, captures Spock and Kirk. That's how the third act ends. Fourth act starts with Kirk now taking over from Krakow, and now he formulates a plan. Now Kirk starts acting like the boss. He acts like them. He sounds like them. He takes decisions like them. That's the only way to communicate with the Iosians. At the end, they do formulate a plan. Plan works out that everybody agrees to that, including the demonstration that the Enterprise is really amazing and formidable. That is a good demonstration there that happens in the fourth act. And at the end, we find that McCoy has left something that could possibly, in the future, lead to a piece of our action. So that's how it ends. All right. So that was piece of the action. So Parvati, how did you like piece of the action?
I enjoyed it. There were a lot of funny moments, and I found it very interesting. Most of the characters were just caricatures of whatever they were supposed to be, which was also quite hilarious. Honestly, Kirk's attempting to talk to them the way they speak is also quite disastrous. I found it very entertaining. I also found it extremely interesting that there was this big fat book called Chicago Gangs of the 1920s that somebody conveniently decided to leave back on Sigma Iotia II so that this entire culture could be based on that. And it was fun. Too many fist fight was fun. What did you think, Bala?
Yeah, who would have thought a book like that would actually change an entire culture?
Yeah.
It's one of those things. I think it's like that butterfly effect that people talk about.
Oh,
Very pivotal moments.
yeah.
Probably just like McCoy's communicator, which was left at the end. This was one of those things that nobody thought much of. It's like you leaving your pair of glasses somewhere and forgetting it,
Exactly.
and retrieving it 15 years later. The way it has actually changed the culture is pretty interesting. I'll be very honest here. The first time I saw it, I didn't think much of it because I didn't quite get what was happening
Yeah.
because of the back and forth nature of this episode.
Yeah.
However, if you step back and look at it, it's like you said, it's a caricature. If
Yes.
you look at it from that perspective, you appreciate the cartoonish nature of the episode. It could easily pass off as a cartoon, and I wouldn't have noticed the difference.
I think one reason the Iosians are so caricaturish is probably because they only have a book to go by. They haven't seen any Chicago gangs of the 1920s. So they've based
Right.
everything on what they read in that one book, and they've come up with something or the other, which is basically not exactly how it's supposed to be, but it works for them. They seem happy enough shooting each other and being quite, they you were talking about the glasses. I wonder if you had left a pair of glasses there and you go back and then what would you find? A temple to the glasses? I don't know, because these people are so unpredictable.
And very, very, let's say, absorbing set of characters. Each of
Yes.
them had the music that accompanies the introduction of Okmyx, and the costumes, the language that they use, all very absorbing. I would say those are the things that I really enjoyed more than the story itself.
I
The
think one of
story,
my
the
yeah.
yeah,
The
go
one
ahead,
of
go
my favorite parts is definitely Kirk attempting to start that car and going backwards.
ahead. Oh yeah, that was amazing. This Kirk does this always. He thinks he knows how to go around the places and use the things of the past. However, he fails miserably. It's one
Poor
more
Spock.
such an
Yeah.
example. Yeah.
I think Spock would get nightmares of that car ride for the rest of his life, because first of all,
He-
you go backwards at full speed, and then Kirk is so reassuring. I know what I'm doing. I might get one of these for myself. And then he makes all these grinding noises with the car, and I don't know how he does that. And then it lurches backward and then it lurches forward. There's so much backfiring. I don't know how he stopped the car. That was a miracle.
Spock summarizes the whole thing. He says, "You're a fine starship commander,
Yes.
but you're a lousy driver."
And when they have to get back into the car, he says, "Must we? Do we need to?" Those are some
Oh man.
really funny moments. I enjoyed all of that. And I really liked Bela Okmyx. He was so over the
Yes.
top, infuriating,
Oh yes.
changeable. You never know what you're getting with him, but he's interesting.
Yes. He has that one mission in his mind. I'm going to take over. I'm going to put a hit.
Yeah.
We put people on ice. These are
Yeah.
some of his directing forces of his life.
Yeah. His lingo is absolutely fantastic. And then after all that tough guy image that he portrays, when Kirk uses the teletransporter to bring one of the other gang bosses into this room, Oxmix becomes like a child and says, "Hey, Captain, that ain't bad." That is so funny. He's easily impressed.
Yeah. So I think Krakow is also not bad. I mean, comes second to that.
Oh,
He's
yes.
also quite a colorful character. He has this dartboard and he's aiming at Bella Oxmix's photo. He's such a funny guy.
His expression spectacular. He's so expressive. It's incredible how he shows what he feels. He's a very animated guy.
Yeah. One of those henchmen could be one of the top bosses also. Gangs and bosses dominate the show, but it could have easily been like a democracy where anybody is equally fit for the top job.
Yes, they all seem equally competent, equally unpredictable. They switch from being very friendly and they speak well, and then suddenly they turn on you and then decide to put you on ice, to use their own lingo, and then threaten to have you shot. And it's very frightening to deal with them because you never know what's coming. And Kirk, yeah,
Iosians are friendly and
yeah, the Iosians can be friendly on the one hand, and then one false move and they turn completely volcanic. You never know what to expect to them. That's what makes them a little bit terrifying. And I'm very impressed that in the middle of all this, Kirk comes up with this wonderful card game called Fizzbin, which makes no sense.
yes, we have to talk about Fizzbin.
Oh, yes.
What was that? What really was going on? First, several layers to this. One is the usage of Fizzbin by Kirk.
Yep.
That's one level
Yep.
we have to talk about. The second level is
Absolutely.
what is the screenwriter thinking about when he or she came up with that idea of using that there. Okay, these two we have to
Absolutely.
talk about.
We have to talk about. And Spock was so helpful, saying, "I know the culture on Beta and Taris 4, and they don't have something called Fizzbin." And Kirk was telling him to stop, 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 just stop. This is not the time for your truthfulness.
It was so
completely
it would have
bizarre.
surprised even McCoy. It would have. I mean, yes,
Mm,
Kirk is always the guy who thinks very differently, like the carbomite maneuver. The crew is used to such out of the box, out of the world, kind of
yes.
out of the universe thinking from Kirk. But
Yep.
Fizzbin pretty much is
It,
took the cake on all of that. Yeah,
and I am
unbelievable. Where did that come from?
I am so amazed that that guy, Callow, the Ioshan,
Huh?
he actually saw sense in Fizzbin and he's attempting to guess what would happen next. And I'm just sitting there and wondering, how did he do that? Because Kirk is making things up as he goes along, and this guy, Callum, is thinking, I know the rules of this game, I can play it. And he's listening so intently to the rules, and he absorbs all of those nonsensical words as though it's manna from heaven. And Kirk here is talking about a shroud and this and that, and on Tuesday, on Wednesday. And this guy is mesmerized. This is a hilarious game.
From the
Yeah,
screenwriter's perspective, I
yeah,
fact that Iosians have been established to be good mimics. So the only
yeah,
way to hoodwink them is to give them something so bizarre that they
yeah,
want to mimic it. So they're so absorbed that Kirk can now
yeah.
come back out of it and do his fist fight thing, right? So it could have been
Yes,
just a fist fight with them playing cards and this guy just topping the table like that. So
it could
why
be.
was Fizzbin introduced? I think because the screenwriter wanted Kirk to give the Iosians a really like tough one to ape. It was very
Yep.
tough, it was very engaging for them. That gives Kirk the moment to go and start his fist fight.
And you never know with the Iosians. The next time you come, you might find that this is a national sport. They are, they are,
International fish competition.
if it's been caught, maybe they'll have
Intergang.
it. I was so impressed with how intently Kelo was listening to the rules. He was mesmerized, he was hypnotized, and he's attempting to on Tuesday, on Wednesday, and he's looking mighty pleased with himself because he thinks he's figured it out. But there's nothing to figure out. It's nonsense.
Yeah, I couldn't keep up with Kirk with my notes. All I have is Fizzbin Tuesday night jacks. All right,
Exactly,
all
that's
that
it.
for a fist fight.
And he also ropes in Spock into the deception and says, what are the odds of something? And Spock, he has to be truthful and he says, I've never computed them, Captain, which is the best he can come up with.
That was amazing.
And I am also impressed with McCoy, who is just standing there stony faced. I am not here. I don't know this game. Don't ask me. I'm not here. Where else?
Then the
Just go
next
ahead.
bit was Spock radios for help
Oh, that is
using
amazing.
the.
And then what comes to
He-
it, he says it's just you manipulated here, manipulated there, and we shall get the Enterprise. And what comes through is something about Bang Bang. I don't even know what Bang Bang is. Is that a gun company?
and as Spock predicted, Uhura picks up. She is
Yes,
monitoring all frequencies, including this bizarre one.
including the bizarre. But it took him a couple of tries to get it for him.
Yeah,
Poor show.
yeah, yeah.
That was quite funny. I mean, he also is a little bit out of his depth on this planet. Spock, it's a little too
Yes,
much for him.
right.
Yeah,
So
and
that gets Spock and McCoy back on board, and
yeah,
only to be beamed back. Spock beams back down and gets
yes,
captured promptly
again,
by Okmyx.
again.
He knew
Or
this is coming. Everybody on the Enterprise and on the planet knew Spock was going to get captured,
yeah,
and Spock had to go there and get captured.
yeah, and
That is how that ended.
and Oxford didn't even have to try. He was just grinning and making things up, and Spock just falls into it completely. He's duped so quickly,
Mm,
and they get back there and they're promptly captured, and it's up to Kirk to get them out again.
right.
So he deserved the
So
car ride for getting duped so quickly.
then somehow they get into the car, the whole thing. Now, fourth act starts with this whole Kirk taking command of the taking over the entire operation, or
Yeah,
he says the Federation guys have taken over. Pulls that whole spiel, and
yeah,
then is that when the Scotty basically gets the encrypted message from Kirk, because He's
Yeah.
speaking like them. He knows the Iosians are listening to him. However, he still has to get across the message that Scott needs to use
The
stun
tele-
ray.
I
Oh yeah,
like
no, this was the transporting part.
the
Okay, okay,
transporter.
all
He
that.
had to use the transporter to tap into the telephone lines and get the gang bosses where they were, where Kirk was.
Yes, yes.
It was also amusing that Scotty was so perplexed with this new lingo. He couldn't understand in the beginning what Kirk was saying. And once they had gotten Krakow out of the way, and Krakow is here on the Enterprise, Scotty tries a bit of lingo on him that goes way over Krakow's head. It didn't register at all. It didn't make any
Even
sense to
Krakow
Krakow.
couldn't get it.
Yeah, he took it
Hey,
literally, which was funny.
yeah,
Yeah,
one of the bosses was the same guy that shows up as the drunk guy in the city at the edge of the universe.
the drunk guy, I can't place him at the moment.
Okay, there's
Yeah,
a boss who wears a black suit. I think he's the same guy. You remember this drunk guy who comes in the city at the edge of the universe, is it?
Edge of Forever, right? City at
Ah,
the Edge
Edge
of
of
Forever.
Forever. Yeah,
Yes.
city at the edge of
Yeah.
forever. There's
Huh.
a guy who confronts McCoy when he first appears and
Yeah. And he's
disappears.
drunk and
He's drunk and
yes.
he disappears because
Yeah.
he switches on the phaser. This is the same actor who also shows up as a boss, the first
Huh.
one to get teleported while speaking.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
his famous first words are mummy.
Mommy.
He's
Mm,
scared. Advanced technology. Until then, you're no use to them until you can actually scare them.
correct, correct,
You really need to outwit them because the Iosians are very bright, very
correct.
intelligent. They can
Exactly.
guess your motives. And so the only way to actually get them to back down is to show physical might, I think. In
Hmm.
this case, Kirk had to use the ship's phases
Yeah.
to scare them into compliance. They don't really know the meaning of fear, I think. They're too out there, too over the top, too loud.
Hmm.
It takes something like the ship's phases to actually get them to back down and listen to what Kirk is saying. And Kirk picks up the gangster language and all those codes that they use so quickly. And
It's
he
brilliant.
makes it the yeah,
What a brilliant job. Kirk did a
yeah,
fantastic. I mean, the actor William Shatner did a fantastic job
yes, he
in
did.
doing that. Really well done.
It was very well done. He goes to that desk, sits back, and puts his legs up, and the typical gang boss. He's
Just
even
like one of them.
just actually scarier than Okmyx, and he knows how to intimidate them. He's been kidnapped quite a few times and threatened by them, so he knows what to expect from these guys. And he just eases into that role so quickly and scares them. He scares them.
No, I think on the one hand, I think that the contamination is what brought about all this. Yes,
Yeah,
true. But
yeah,
it was in the manner in which it was brought out. However, I think that these gangs are just a way of that the inner feelings that these Iosians had, which is to form groups and dominate over the other,
yeah,
probably is innate in all these Iosians. And the way it was brought about was this gang hits and ice and all that.
yeah.
However, I think it would have been in one form or the other. The
Yes.
contamination just brought it out in this manner, is what my
In this manner.
analysis is.
Yes, I think even if you had left something as maybe if they had left something like Cinderella, they would still have followed the same thing and managed to form some sort of domination, some sort of a violent culture. They seem to be innately kind of violent and
Hmm.
they are also terribly imitative. So it leaves you wondering they have these personality traits, they have these racial traits, but at the
Hmm.
same time, they're so imitative that you wonder if they would have advanced on their own at all in any form, unless
Hmm.
they need some kind of external stimulus at all times. The ending demonstrates when McCoy reveals that he's made a mistake by leaving something back there. They're a very peculiar alien race. They don't seem to have any identity of their own, even though they have some personality traits like domination. They are more prone to violence. They remind me a little bit of the Klingons in that sense because they're so violent. They want to fight all the time.
Hmm.
So
Correct.
they seem to be, despite having all those traits, they still need some kind of external stimulus, and that's what keeps them going. They're very switchable. If they get this, they will go this way. If they get this other piece of contamination, they will go that way. It's, they are very alien in that sense.
I would think that this is a very chief dominated sort of
Yes,
society. These gangs are like tribes,
they are. Yeah.
and whatever the chief says, the rest of them follow.
Yes.
So, having a syndicate where, quote unquote, the top boss is the
Mm.
federation
Yeah.
really helps, because now they're listening to this chief
Yeah.
who will probably visit once a year and get the cut,
Demand is cut.
demand their piece of the pie.
Yeah.
I think the solution is very agreeable to the Iosians, because it fits in line with how they are thinking right now. Of course, they could evolve.
Exactly.
With they are cooperating and collaborating, not because the other one will benefit, but because the top boss has told us so.
Exactly. They like to follow might. So the stronger
Mm.
you are, the more likely it is that they will do what you tell them to do. And
Correct.
Kirk has, at the end of this episode, proven to them that he has a technology to flatten them.
Mm.
That is the main reason why they feel he's someone worth following. You have to prove your might, otherwise, they're just gonna put you on ice and God knows what else. They have a lot of ideas. So,
Right.
yeah.
Mm. All right. So, should we get into likes and dislikes? What did you like and dislike in this episode, Parvati?
I actually enjoyed this quite a bit, and how loud and out there all of these characters were, forcing Kirk to become that way. That is also something I really liked, and I found it extremely interesting. What I also like that they were so impeccably dressed. All of them were wearing
Mm.
suits and ties, and they had these guns. Everything is very perfect. It's textbook caricature, and it was very fun to watch. Now, the one thing I didn't quite like was probably the fist fights. There were quite a lot of them, way too many of them. It took a while because you punch this guy and then you have to punch the other guy and then you come back to the third guy. It was a little bit too much for me. I also liked the ending. It was so much fun.
Yes.
McCoy's revelation that he left his communicator back there on the planet, and now the Iosians are going to take apart the communicator and they're going to figure out how it works, and now they're going to copy the Federation and Starfleet. Very, very amusing. What about you?
Yeah, I like the whole Chicago style gangs, the entire thing done supremely well. The boss lingo and Spock being annoyed by the illogical nature of the Iosians, as well as Kirk, was thoroughly entertaining. Kirk playing the hunch as usual. The car ride, the taxi, the Starship Commander comment was amazing. I like that little guy's role. He said,
Oh,
I don't want
yeah.
money, give me a piece of the act. That
Yeah.
summed up the entire episode. They're doing all this for the kicks of it. And that's, of course, what I didn't like, not the card game itself, that was
Mm.
cool.
Yeah.
But all that for only a fist fight didn't
Yep.
make sense at the time. But I thought, okay,
Exactly.
maybe they're going for a different way to tackle these Iosians. You can't do the same kind of things that work somewhere else. On the whole, I love this episode. On the second watching than my first one.
Um, I think Fizzbin circuited them enough to be confused, and that was what Kirk wanted. He wanted to punch them, but he needed them confused first so that they're too startled to react. And Fizzbin did that. It made them too taken aback. They couldn't do anything. They're just staring at him.
So now we get to the last question, which is hypothetically, if the
Yeah.
screenwriter were to appear in our show, what would we ask them to change or explain?
I don't think I'd ask them to change anything other than just reduce fist fights a little bit. There were quite a few, and I'm not sure I would ask them to change anything else. I mean, it's fine as is. It's a funny episode. It's fun to watch and very loud and over the top, as I said before, and that makes it quite entertaining. And I enjoyed it. What about you?
Same here. I wouldn't ask them to change anything. Explanation not required, because what I didn't understand, the implication of the Fizzbin, I think we figured it out. There's nothing really. That's what I wrote down, saying what's Fizzbin doing right there. But I figured it out. I know
Okay.
what was it introduced for. So I'm cool.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for the episode, is what I would tell the screenplay writer.
Absolutely. This was fun.
Okay. Thank you so much, Parvati, and
Thank
thanks
you.
everyone for listening to this episode. And we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you and bye.
Bye, everyone.
That brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you for listening to the podcast Enterprise. Please do share your reviews with us, and please share this podcast with any of your writing friends or trickies. Live long and prosper.